Wu Bin had three rules that kept him alive in Seoul's underworld. Never show weakness, never trust outsiders, and never, ever, let anyone close enough to see the cracks. But when his grandmother threatened to give his billion-dollar empire to his sock-selling cousin unless he went on one blind date, he realized that surviving gunfights was easier than surviving family. The woman who walked in that night, carrying Tupperware, wearing an impossible dress, and speaking Korean like she owned the language, didn't just break his rules. She shattered his entire world, one laughing comment at a time. Welcome to the channel. I want to know, what country or city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. The thing about running Seoul's most profitable criminal empire was that people rarely said no to Wu Bin. Politicians stammered. Rivals disappeared. Business associates bowed so low their foreheads practically kissed the floor. Even his enemies showed respect, mostly because disrespect tended to result in mysterious accidents involving construction sites and the Han River. So when his 78-year-old grandmother slammed her soup spoon on the table hard enough to make the banchan dishes jump, Wu Bin experienced something he hadn't felt in years. Genuine fear. You're going on a blind date, or I'm rewriting my will. They were sitting in her traditional hanok in Bukshan, a house worth approximately $8 million that she refused to leave despite Wu Bin's repeated offers to buy her a penthouse. She'd cooked kimchi jjigae, which was either a peace offering or a trap. With Halmiani, it was always hard to tell. I'm busy Friday, Wu Bin said, keeping his voice level. He'd negotiated with Yakuza bosses and Chinese triads. He could handle one elderly Korean woman. Probably. You're busy being emotionally constipated, his grandmother shot back, ladling more stew into his bowl with aggressive hospitality. 32 years old. No wife. No girlfriend. Nothing but those suits that cost more than my first house and that ridiculous penthouse that looks like a hotel lobby. I date. You attend dinners with women who want her money and leave when they realize you have the emotional range of a refrigerator. She pointed the ladle at him like a weapon. Your grandfather, may he rest in peace, would be ashamed. Wu Bin's jaw tightened. His grandfather had built the family business from nothing, legitimate import-export that had slowly, carefully, profitably slid into less legitimate territories. He'd also died believing Wu Bin would marry well, produce heirs, and maintain the family legacy. Instead, Wu Bin's engagement had exploded spectacularly 5 years ago when his fiancée absconded with his father's accountant and half the offshore accounts. The scandal had killed his father, destroyed his trust in relationships, and turned him into exactly what Seoul's underworld needed: cold, calculating, and completely unattached. I don't have time for this, he said. Then make time, or everything goes to your cousin Ji-hoon. Wu Bin nearly dropped a spoon. The one who sells novelty socks on Instagram? He's entrepreneurial, and he calls me every week. His grandmother's eyes gleamed with triumph. She knew she'd won. One date. Friday night. Myeongdong. 7 o'clock. With who? A nice girl. The phrase nice girl in his grandmother's vocabulary could mean anything from a doctor's daughter to a K-pop trainee to, apparently, a complete wild card. Wu Bin had learned not to trust her matchmaking after she'd once set him up with a woman who turned out to be an undercover financial crimes investigator. That dinner had been awkward for everyone involved. Korean, he asked carefully. His grandmother's smile could have cut glass. American. Wu Bin's mind raced through the implications. American meant unpredictable. American meant someone outside his carefully controlled world. American meant complications he didn't need while managing 3 territory disputes and a weapons shipment from Vladivostok. Halmiani, she's a chef. Very talented. I've eaten at her restaurant. You never eat at restaurants. You say they're overpriced and underseasoned. This one is different. His grandmother stood, clearing dishes with the efficiency of someone who'd raised 3 children and buried 2 husbands. She has character. Character. That word, in his grandmother's mouth, was either highest praise or a warning label. Possibly both. Wu Bin knew when he was beaten. His grandmother held the ultimate weapon, his inheritance. Everything he'd built in the past 5 years was technically still in family trusts she controlled. She'd never actually give it to Ji-hoon, probably, but the threat was real enough to sting. One date, he conceded. One date, she agreed. Then, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, and she's black." Wu Bin's brain stuttered to a halt. His grandmother watched his reaction with the intensity of a scientist observing a particularly interesting experiment. Problem. "I know, of course not, he scrambled for words, aware he was being tested. "I've never." "Exactly." She smiled, satisfied. Friday, 7 o'clock. Where something that doesn't scream, "I commit crimes for a living." After Wu Bin left, his grandmother pulled out her phone and texted her friend Jian. "Operation Save Grandson. Phase 1 complete." He agreed. "Prepare Eunice." The response came immediately. "Is he going to be weird about her being black?" "Extremely weird. That's why this will work." "You're evil. I prefer strategically invested in my grandson's emotional development." "Still evil. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe." Where in the map are you watching from? Eunice Washington had learned 3 important truths about running a restaurant in Seoul. Korean ajumas were tougher critics than any Michelin inspector. Gochuguru made everything better, and her existence as a black woman cooking soul food in Itaewon was either going to be a spectacular success or a beautiful disaster. 3 years in, it was somehow both. Eunice, Mrs. Park, her elderly neighbor and self-appointed Korean grandmother, burst through the restaurant door at 10 a.m., which was exactly when Eunice was trying to prep for lunch service. "You cannot put cheese in tteokbokki. It's mac and cheese tteok fusion, Mrs. Park. We've been over this." Eunice didn't look up from the collard greens she was washing. "Your grandson ordered it 3 times last week." "My grandson has no taste. He also dated that girl with the eyebrows." "What was wrong with her eyebrows?" "Everything." Mrs. Park settled onto a stool, which meant she was staying. "Also, I hear you have blind date Friday." Eunice's hands stilled in the water. "How do you know what? Never mind." "Yes." Jian's grandmother set it up. "Ah, Mrs. Choi. Very clever woman. Very sneaky." Mrs. Park nodded approvingly. "The man is her grandson. Very handsome. Very rich. Very probably boring," Eunice muttered. In her experience, blind dates existed in 2 categories: awkwardly painful or spectacularly disastrous. There was no middle ground. "He's businessman," Mrs. Park continued, which in Korean culture could mean anything from Samsung executive to guy who sold insurance. "Great. I love business." Eunice moved to her stove, where gochujang sauce was simmering next to a pot of her grandmother's hot sauce recipe. The smells married in the air, sweet heat meeting smoky fire. "He's probably going to take one look at me and bolt." "Why?" "You're pretty, successful, good cook." "Mrs. Park, I'm a black woman running a soul food restaurant in Korea. I'm not exactly traditional daughter-in-law material. Traditional is boring. My daughter-in-law is traditional. She serves me instant ramen and thinks I don't notice." Mrs. Park sniffed. You have spirit. Like kimchi with personality." Eunice laughed despite herself. "Did you just compare me to aggressive cabbage? Best compliment I know." The lunch rush started at noon and didn't stop until 2:30 p.m. Eunice's restaurant was small, only 15 tables, but every seat filled with her carefully cultivated crowd. Art students from Hongdae, English teachers from across Seoul, Korean food bloggers looking for the next weird trend, and an increasingly loyal group of local businessmen who discovered that fried chicken with gochujang glaze could heal a hangover better than any haejanguk. Her sous chef, Minjun, a culinary school dropout with a mohawk and arms covered in tattoos, worked the line beside her with efficient precision. "Table 7 wants extra cornbread," he called out in Korean. "Table 7 always wants extra cornbread," Eunice replied, also in Korean, though her accent still made Minjun wince sometimes. "Give them 2 pieces. Charge for 1. You're too nice." "I'm strategically building customer loyalty." "You're a pushover," says the man who gave that crying college student free sweet potato pie last week. Minjun's ears turned red. She reminded me of my sister. Around 3 p.m., after the lunch crowd cleared, a woman in oversized Chanel sunglasses and an expensive hanbok sat at the corner table. She'd been coming in twice a week for the past month, always alone, always ordering the same thing: mac and cheese with extra gochujang, collard greens, and mac giali. Eunice brought the food over personally. How is everything Halmiani? The woman smiled, and something about it reminded Eunice of a cat that had just successfully hidden a dead mouse in someone's shoe. Perfect as always. You know, my grandson needs to eat more vegetables. Most men do. He's very stubborn, very closed-minded, needs someone to shake up his boring life. Eunice nodded politely, wondering where this was going. You're going on blind date Friday, yes?
Oh,
Oh no. With your grandson? Eunice asked carefully. He's very handsome, very rich, terrible personality, but we're working on that. The woman, Mrs. Choi, apparently, removed her sunglasses to reveal sharp, calculating eyes. Also, he's never dated black women. Probably never even spoken to black woman. His loss. His problem. Your opportunity. That's quite a sales pitch. I'm not selling. I'm warning. Mrs. Choi leaned forward conspiratorially. He's going to be weird, awkward, maybe rude. Don't let him win. He needs someone who doesn't take his nonsense. Eunice should have said no. Should have canceled immediately. Should have recognized this entire setup as the beautiful disaster her life specialized in. Instead, she heard herself say, "What's his favorite food?" Mrs. Choi's smile could have lit up all of Gangnam. That's my girl. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe. Woobin arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, which gave him time to position two bodyguards at the corner cafe, one in a parked car across the street, and his driver circling the block. Overkill?
probably.
But paranoia had kept him alive this long, and he wasn't about to get sloppy over a blind date. The restaurant his grandmother had chosen was upscale Korean fusion, the kind of place where minimalist decor cost more than the food and everyone spoke in hushed, respectful tones. Woobin approved. Neutral territory. Easy exit routes. Witnesses if things went sideways. He checked his watch. 6:58 p.m. He'd worn his least threatening Tom Ford suit, which still probably screamed money laundering, but it was the best he could do. At 7 p.m. exactly, the door opened. Woobin looked up, and his brain immediately short-circuited. The woman walking toward him was wearing a hanbok, a traditional Korean dress, but the fabric was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Vibrant African prints in oranges, golds, and deep blues swirled across the giagari and chima, somehow both completely wrong and absolutely perfect. Her locks were styled up elegantly, wrapped with what looked like traditional Diangi ribbons, and she carried a Tupperware container like it was a designer handbag. Every head in the restaurant turned. She walked straight to his table with the confidence of someone who owned the room, smiled wider than anyone had smiled at him in years, and said in Korean with the thickest American accent he'd ever heard, "You must be Woobin. Your Halmiani said you look like you haven't eaten vegetables since 2019. I brought collard greens with gochugaru. Consider it a cultural exchange program." Woobin's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Wow, they really nailed your personality description, Eunice continued, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. She started unpacking her Tupperware. Strong silent type mixed with emotionally unavailable robot.
It's a whole vibe.
Very K-drama villain. You. Woobin finally found his voice. You speak Korean? Annyeonghaseyo. Eunice gestured at herself. Obviously. Been here 3 years. Opened a restaurant in Itaewon. Eunice's hanbok and hot sauce. We serve identity crisis food for people with excellent taste. A waiter approached their table, moving with the nervous energy of someone who'd recognized Woobin and was now wondering if this was a date or a business meeting that might end with someone in the Han River. She'll have the galbi, Woobin started, defaulting to control. I'll have the gopchan, Eunice interrupted cheerfully. Extra spicy, and tell Chef Kim his nice skills are finally improving but his seasoning game is still weak. Also, I want that banchan with the dried anchovies you're hiding in the back. The waiter's eyes went wide. You know Chef Kim? We did a cooking competition last month at the Jongnyo Food Festival. I won.
He cried.
We got drunk together afterward. Now we're best friends. She turned to Woobin. You want anything, or are you just going to sit there looking like a confused marble statue? The beef, Woobin managed. After the waiter scurried away, Eunice leaned back and studied him with unsettling directness.
So,
Your grandmother told me you're in business. What kind? Import-export. The standard lie.
uh-huh.
And what do you import-export? Vague answers and tax evasion. Wu Bin's eye twitched. Luxury goods. Entertainment venues. Various investments. That's a fancy way of saying you own nightclubs and probably some other stuff you don't want to talk about. Eunice opened her Tupperware, releasing the smell of collard greens that had been seasoned with gochugaru, sesame oil, and what smelled like bacon. Don't worry, I'm not a cop. I'm just a chef who's really good at reading people and terrible at minding my own business. I can tell.
See?
We're bonding already. She pushed the container toward him. Try this. Your Halmini says you only eat convenience store kimbap and whatever your housekeeper leaves in your fridge. That's not. Wubin stopped because it was absolutely true. Fine. He took a bite of the collard greens. The flavors hit his tongue like a revelation. The slight bitterness of the greens, the heat from gochugaru, the smokiness of the bacon, all balanced with a sweetness that somehow made everything work together. It tasted like two completely different worlds had decided to become best friends. Well, Eunice watched him with the intensity of a chef waiting for judgment. Wubin searched for words. It's actually good. Actually good.
Wow.
You really know how to make a girl feel special. But she was smiling. Your Halmini was right. You do need help. My grandmother talks too much. Your grandmother is a genius, and you should appreciate her more. Eunice's smile turned mischievous. She also told me you've never dated a black woman. Never even been friends with a black woman. Probably never had a real conversation with a black woman. Wubin felt heat crawling up his neck. I'm not. Relax. I'm not here to give you a diversity lecture. I'm just here for the free galbi.
She paused.
And to see if you're as uptight as your grandmother described. Spoiler alert, you're worse. For the first time in 15 years, Wubin didn't know whether to be offended or impressed. This woman had walked into his carefully controlled world wearing an impossible dress, carrying collard greens, and treating him like a particularly stubborn restaurant review instead of Seoul's most dangerous businessman. It was absolutely terrifying. It was also, he realized with growing horror, the most interesting thing that had happened to him in years. The evening was going surprisingly well, which should have been Wu Bin's first warning sign. In his experience, when things went smoothly, the universe was just setting up for a spectacular disaster. Eunice was halfway through a story about accidentally ordering pig intestines instead of pork belly during her first month in Korea. The Ajumma thought it was hilarious. I did not. When Wu Bin's phone buzzed, he glanced at the screen and his blood went cold. The message was from his head of security. Asterisk problem. Parking garage. Now. Asterisk. He looked up to find 3 men entering the restaurant. They wore expensive suits that didn't quite hide the bulges of weapons underneath. Wu Bin recognized the lead man immediately, Kang Min-ho, a rival gang boss from Busan who'd been making aggressive moves into Seoul territory. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a statement. So anyway, the Ajumma ended up teaching me how to actually cook gopchang, and now it's... Eunice stopped mid-sentence, reading his expression. What's wrong? Nothing. Wu Bin lied smoothly, his mind racing through exit strategies. I need to use the restroom. You look like you just saw a ghost with a vendetta. I'm fine. Kang Min-ho spotted them. His smile was the kind sharks wore before biting. He changed direction, heading straight for their table. Asterisk Aish asterisk, Wu Bin muttered under his breath. Okay, that's definitely not a I need to pee face, Eunice said. That's a someone's about to get stabbed face. I've worked in New York restaurants. I know the difference. Kang arrived at their table with 2 bodyguards flanking him. Wu Bin SSI. What a pleasant surprise. His Korean was oily, false. Having dinner with a friend? The way he said friend made it clear he meant something far less polite. Wu Bin stood slowly, positioning himself between Kang and Eunice. Min-ho. I didn't know Busan rats were allowed in Seoul restaurants. Hi. Eunice's voice cut through the testosterone like a knife through butter. She stood up, extending her hand to Kang with a smile that could sell insurance. I'm Eunice. You must be one of Wu Bin's business associates. The kind who shows up unannounced and makes everyone uncomfortable. Very bold strategy. Kong blinked, clearly not expecting whatever this was. Are you staying for dinner? Because I have to warn you, the gopchang here is good, but it's not crash someone's date good. That's more of a at least call first kind of meal. One of Kang's bodyguards reached toward his jacket. Wu Bin's hand moved instinctively toward his own concealed weapon. Eunice, apparently oblivious to the imminent violence, kept talking.
Oh,
Are you guys here for the bibimbap? Because let me tell you, their gochujang game is weak. I make better gochujang in my sleep. Actually, I make better gochujang while drunk. One time Eunice, Wu Bin said quietly. Please stop talking.
why?
Am I interrupting your weird male posturing thing? She looked between them with genuine curiosity. Because it seems very dramatic and I'm here for it, but also kind of unnecessary? Like, we're in a nice restaurant. Can't the testosterone contest wait until after dessert? Kang's expression shifted from threatening to confused. Who is this woman? She's none of your concern, Wu Bin said, his voice dropping to the dangerous register that usually made people reconsider their life choices. Actually, I'm very much my own concern, Eunice corrected. Also, your friend here, she pointed at one of Kang's bodyguards, is reaching for what I'm assuming is either a gun or really aggressive breath mints, and honestly, both seem excessive for a Friday night. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Other diners were pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. The manager was on the phone, probably calling the police, which would complicate everything. Kang's smile returned, nastier than before. You're right. This isn't the place. He looked directly at Eunice. But maybe your friend here should be more careful about the company she keeps. Seoul can be very dangerous for outsiders who don't understand how things work. Was that a threat? Eunice's eyebrows shot up. Because it sounded like a threat, but it was so vague I can't tell if you're being menacing or just bad at conversation. Eunice, Wu Bin started. No, seriously, if you're going to threaten me, commit to it. Give me details. Make it scary. This whole dangerous for outsiders thing is giving very I learned English from subtitles energy. Kang's face flushed red. You stupid. He reached for Eunice's arm. Wu Bin moved faster than thought, grabbing Kang's wrist with enough force to make bones grind. Touch her, and you won't leave this restaurant alive. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Kang's bodyguards reached for their weapons. Wu Bin's security materialized from the corners of the restaurant. Other diners started screaming and scrambling for exits. And Eunice, standing in the middle of what was about to become a bloodbath, sighed dramatically.
Great.
Now, the gopchang's going to get cold. She grabbed her Tupperware container and swung it at the nearest bodyguard's head with the casual efficiency of someone who'd worked in restaurant kitchens for 15 years. The container connected with a satisfying thunk. The bodyguard stumbled. Run, Wu Bin shouted, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the kitchen exit. I just ordered. Eunice protested, but she was already moving, her heels clicking against the floor as they burst through the kitchen doors. This is the worst blind date ever. And I once had a guy bring his mother. Behind them, chaos erupted. Gunshots. Shouting. The sound of very expensive furniture being destroyed. Wu Bin's driver was already pulling up to the back alley, tires squealing. They dove into the car. Go! Wu Bin barked. As they peeled away from the restaurant, Eunice finally processed what had just happened. She turned to Wu Bin, breathing hard, and said, So, when you said import-export, you meant crime boss, didn't you? Wu Bin, still holding her hand without realizing it, could only nod.
Cool.
Eunice nodded slowly. Your grandmother definitely left that part out of the dating profile. Wu Bin's penthouse was exactly what Eunice expected. All glass, steel, and the emotional warmth of a luxury morgue. The view of the Han River was spectacular. The interior design screamed, I have money, but no idea what joy looks like. Nice place, she said, still clutching her Tupperware container like a weapon. Very serial killer with excellent credit score vibes. Wu Bin was on his phone, barking orders in rapid Korean to what sounded like his entire security team. He'd switched from awkward date mode to terrifying crime boss mode so fast Eunice was getting whiplash. She wandered to his kitchen, a pristine masterpiece of marble and chrome that had clearly never been used, and started opening cabinets. What are you doing? Wubin asked, covering his phone. Looking for actual food. You have 3 bottles of expensive whiskey, protein powder, and she opened the fridge. One sad piece of convenience store kimbap from last Tuesday. This is depressing. You're a billionaire who eats like a college student. I don't have time to eat, to live, to experience basic human joy. Eunice pulled out the collard greens from her Tupperware. Where are your pots? I don't know. You don't know where the pots are in your own kitchen? I've never used them. Eunice stared at him. That's the saddest thing I've heard today, and today included getting shot at. She found the pots, still wrapped in plastic, and started heating up the collard greens. Wubin finished his call and watched her move through his kitchen with the efficiency of someone who actually knew what kitchens were for. You're not afraid, he said finally. Oh, I'm terrified. Eunice stirred the greens. I'm just really good at compartmentalizing. Also, I grew up in Atlanta. You think soul gangsters are scary? Try navigating Southern church politics. Those aunties will smile while destroying your entire reputation over potato salad. Despite everything, the violence, the danger, the complete destruction of what was supposed to be a simple blind date, Wubin laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. Your grandmother set me up with a crime boss, Eunice continued. A Korean crime boss who apparently has enemies that crash dinner dates. This is either the best or worst matchmaking ever. I can't decide. You should leave Seoul, Wubin said seriously.
Tonight.
Kang Min-ho saw you with me. That makes you a target. Excuse me? Eunice spun around, wooden spoon in hand like a weapon. Leave Seoul? Leave my restaurant? Leave the city I've spent 3 years building a life in because some Busan gangster with bad manners and worse timing decided to crash our date. He's dangerous. Asterisk, you're asterisk dangerous. And yet here I am, heating up collard greens in your emotionally sterile kitchen at 10 p.m. on a Friday. She pointed the spoon at him. I didn't leave New York when my ex tried to destroy me. I didn't leave when everyone said a black woman couldn't make it in Korea. I'm sure as hell not leaving because of some wannabe tough guy who probably uses 3-in-1 shampoo. Wubin blinked. No one talked to him like this.
Ever.
People either cowered or obeyed. Eunice was doing neither. Besides, she continued, plating the food with the precision of a chef who'd done this 10,000 times. Your grandmother will kill me if I abandon you now. She's already invested 2 months of undercover restaurant visits in this operation. Do you know how committed someone has to be to eat at the same place twice a week for 2 months? That's love. Or psychosis. Possibly both. She what? Oh, you didn't know? Eunice smiled wickedly. Your Halmiani has been coming to my restaurant since March. Always the same order. Always asking questions about my life. I thought she was just a sweet old lady who liked my cooking. Turns out she was conducting reconnaissance. Wubin sat down heavily. His grandmother had orchestrated this entire thing with the precision of a military operation. He'd been outmaneuvered by a 78-year-old woman and a chef with a Tupperware container. Eat, Eunice commanded, pushing a plate toward him. You look like you need vegetables and therapy, and I can only provide one of those things. He ate. The collard greens were even better reheated, somehow. The flavors had married together, Korean heat and Southern soul in perfect harmony. This is really good, he admitted. I know. I'm excellent. Eunice sat across from him, finally looking tired. So, are we going to talk about how you're a crime boss, or are we going to pretend this is normal? What do you want to know? Everything. Start with why that guy hates you, and end with how many people you've actually killed. And don't lie, I can tell when people lie. Chef superpower. Wubin looked at this impossible woman who'd crashed into his life, wearing an African print hanbok, survived a gang confrontation, and was now demanding his life story over collard greens in his kitchen at midnight. He should send her away. Should protect her by cutting all ties. Should go back to his carefully controlled, emotionally sterile existence. Instead, he started talking. And 3 hours later, when Eunice finally fell asleep on his couch, still wearing her hanbok, still clutching her empty Tupperware, Wubin realized something terrifying. His grandmother's plan was working. He picked up his phone and texted, "You're diabolical." Halmiani's response came immediately. Asterisk, you're welcome. Bring her to Sunday dinner. I'm making Galbi. Asterisk. She was almost killed tonight. Asterisk, but she wasn't. She hit a man with Tupperware and made you laugh. Marry her. Asterisk. It was one date. Asterisk, best date of your life. Don't lie. Asterisk. Wupin looked at Eunice sleeping on his couch, her locks spread across his expensive throw pillow, and couldn't argue. Outside, Seoul glittered in the darkness. Somewhere in the city, Kong Minho was plotting revenge. His empire was under threat. His enemies were circling. And all Wu Bin could think about was whether Eunice would agree to a second date. Assuming, of course, they both survived the week. If you think Kong Minho is the kind of coward who threatens women because he can't handle real competition, drop a comment saying real strength protects. It doesn't intimidate. Only bullies and trolls would disagree. And if you want to see whether Eunice survives Seoul's underworld with nothing but hot sauce and audacity, you know what to do. Subscribe, because people like Kong hate when women like Eunice win.